Hello artists! Today we will be learning a bit about the world of clay and ceramics. Clay is an earthy material that is sticky and can easily be molded or shaped into different things when wet. When the clay has been fired or very hot, it turns into a hard object called ceramics. Artists around the world have been making ceramics for centuries. Artists may choose to work with clay to make everyday objects like bowls and cups, create something for decoration, and make things that tell stories. How is clay made? First, clay is gathered from the earth. Next, it is soaked and mixed in water until it becomes liquid. It then goes through many screens to get separated from the other earth materials. The clay is then prepared to dry overnight. The clay is then wedged. Other ingredients are then added to make it a usable clay. A cloth is then laid down over a giant screen so the clay can dry. After drying for a while, it is now ready to use. Artists shape and mold the clay to create different objects. Once they have decided to keep the shape of an object, it needs to be left out to dry. Once it is dry all the way through, it becomes bone dry, which is when it is ready to be fired for the first firing in the kiln. A kiln is a special oven where the bone-dry clay is fired to over 1,900 degrees Fahrenheit. Once it is cooled, it becomes bisqueware and is ready to be glazed or painted. The bisqueware can be dipped or painted with glaze, and then will be fired again. Once it is cooled, it becomes ceramic. This entire process takes many weeks to complete, and has many steps that could go wrong or lead to their work breaking. So ceramic artists practice a lot of patience. There are 3 expectations you need to know for today to be successful. 1. We will not be keeping anything you make today. At the end of today, you will be rolling anything you make back into a ball to be ready for the next class. We are experimenting today because it is important to learn how to use the clay tools and get a good understanding of how clay works. We will be making a clay project the next time you come to art. 2. Clay stays in the art room. Your projects will be ready to leave the art studio only after they have been fired and finished. 3. Use tools in a safe and appropriate manner. Remember to take care of yourself, each other, and the clay studio so you and future students can use our clay tools next time the clay studio opens. Now that we've gone over the expectations, here are some techniques and tips you will need to know for today's experimenting day. When you get your clay, the first thing you will need to do is wedge your clay. Wedging mixes up your clay to make it smoother, easier to mold, and pushes out the air bubbles in your clay. If the air bubbles in your clay trap water inside and don't evaporate or leave while your clay is drying, it could lead to your artwork exploding in the kiln. If you have ever worked with dough or bread, kneading dough is similar to wedging clay. How you do it is you push with the palm of your hands and roll it over, then push against the surface to get the air bubbles out. Another way you can do this is lightly pound the clay against the table to get the air bubbles to go to the surface. Only do this until the clay feels the same all the way through and is smooth. Now, let's look at some hand building techniques. To roll a ball, use your palms to draw circles on your clay, using your other palm or the table against it. This is a great way to get your clay ready to form the shapes you need. Pinching is when you use one hand to pinch the clay and the other hand to support it. Try to control the thickness of the clay by making small, gentle pinches overlapping each other. If you pinch your clay too thin, it will be easy to break when it is bone dry, so try to keep your clay as thick as your thumb so it will be strong and won't break off when it dries. A coil is made when you roll a piece of clay back and forth with your hands until it looks like a rope. Roll from the center to the outside with even pressure. The coil will need to be as thick as your thumb. Often, you will want to attach two pieces of clay together. If you place the pieces of clay together, they will just fall apart when the clay is bone dry. To make the pieces stick, you will need to use the technique called score and slip. Score is when you use a tool to scratch a crisscross texture in the area of the clay you want to attach. You will need to check where you want the pieces to be attached, then score the places where the two pieces meet. Slip is like a liquid version of the clay. It's a mixture of clay and water that can be used as glue to attach the pieces together. You will need to scoop some slip and place it over the spots you scored the clay, then gently place the pieces together. Use enough pressure for the pieces to attach and stick together. To help it stick even more, you can smooth out the edges where the pieces meet so it looks like one piece of clay. After a while, you might notice the clay getting cold and hard to mold, meaning it is starting to dry. You will need to add more moisture to your clay to keep it soft, so make a pocket and pour a little bit of slip and wedge the clay together. Add a little bit at a time until it is soft enough to use. If you add too much water, it will turn into slip and lose its shape. You will know you added too much water if your hands become sticky and muddy. When working with clay, your hands should feel dry and not stick to the clay. A slab is a flat piece of clay. One way to create a slab is by gently tossing it on the table, rotating it, and doing the same to the other side to make it even. Make sure it is not too thin, otherwise it will easily break when it dries. With the slab, you can sketch out a shape with your tools. If you made a mistake, it can be erased using some slip and rubbing it over the mark. Following your sketch, you can use some other tools to cut out your design. Make sure to smooth out any sharp edges before the clay is fired, otherwise it will not be safe to touch. Remember that today is an experimenting day, and we will not be keeping anything you make today. Try some of the techniques we talked about in this demonstration, try making patterns and designs with your tools, and find out how clay feels and works. Have fun and be safe. Let's experiment!